Okay, so I have a very serious question for everybody in the room, including our special guest, but we'll get to him in just a moment. If you could make a live action movie out of any video game, what would you pick? And it has to be a game that has not been made into a movie or TV show. I'll give you a TV show also. And you know what? I'm going to start with our special guest. The official introduction in a little bit. But Johnny, what would you pick?
Well, recently this came up, Control, because I played Control and I kind of bounced off the gameplay. I felt like the gameplay got in the way of the story, and I'm like, this would probably be better as a movie or a show than it was as a game.
100%. That's those games from that developer, like Alan Wake, like all of those, they have that cinematic quality to them. Like they would be perfect for a TV adaptation.
I like that answer. That's a solid answer. What about you, Jeff W?
Oh, that video game, The Walking Dead. No. If I had to,
You went the other way.
if it wouldn't be good, but I would want to see like a Gears of War, maybe mini series, maybe a movie. I don't know if I want a movie. I think I'd rather have like an HBO, Max type TV show. But yeah, Gears of War. Put Batista in there. Let's just do it, and get it over with. In my opinion,
only if it has Bautista or the guy who played Doink the Clown.
Robbie, that's a wrestler.
No.
Just so you know.
Dave Batista.
I've heard of it.
Batista.
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Vactor?
Well, let's just say if there did not exist a version of this already, I want an animated Legend of Zelda. I want another one. I want a gritty reboot. I want 2024 reboot. I don't want
no holds barred. Yeah.
I want Link to be depressed.
Link smokes.
Not only did he answer the question incorrectly, he said he wanted a gritty Zelda.
Yeah. I want Link to be dark. I want him to be brooding.
Well, excuse
me.
Yeah.
Link's a slightly racist old timer.
Yeah.
on the
all of this is perfect. I love it.
A new guy.
I love it.
Okay.
He takes a long drag of his cigarette. Let me tell you about when I was with the cookery.
Yes. Yes. Perfect.
All right. Well, I think I like that idea. Despite how dumb it was. I like that idea. For me, I would pick, boys. I would pick a video game that I really loved, but I barely understood, which was Elden Ring.
Ooh.
And I would turn it into a 3-hour epic or a 13-episode miniseries that I also can't understand, but at least it would have that girl with the forearms.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I liked her. I don't understand the ending. All I know is that my head turned into fire and that tree exploded. That's all I remember. So give me a different ending to the series.
That's another one. I fell into the hype and I got Elden Ring and I hadn't played any of the Souls games before and I did not finish it.
Oh man,
gameplay didn't do it for me.
I had about 120 hours into that game, and let me tell you, I still can't really tell you what that game was about. It just doesn't make that much sense. All right, welcome everybody to level 87 of the Sandbox podcast, where 3 vidiots plus 1 this week. Life, love, and the pursuit of Vidya. Thank you so much. Our co-host with the most, Wonder Rob, coming at you live on YouTube Live, but semi-live for everybody else after the fact from Southern California. And on the line with me are 2 of my best Arizona friends in the metaverse, the Indiana Jones of our podcast, Vactor.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
And the Mutt Williams of our pod, the always angry Jeff W.
Who is? I don't even know who that is.
That's Shia LaBeouf. You're my son, Jeff.
Oh,
You died.
Nah, I want to be the Asian kid.
What?
But okay.
Well,
Speaking of-
hold on. According to the script here, I'm short round.
Oh,
No time for
that
love,
guy.
Dr. Jones.
I had in the script, I had Jeff as short round, but I said, let me switch him because he's a Mutt. He's the best version of Mutt Williams possible.
Wow.
So I had to switch it up.
That was that, you know what? That was a wise choice. Very astute on your part. And this week on the podcast, you heard him speaking before. We have a very special guest all the way from Pennsylvania, outside of a Wawa, from the Geek the F Out podcast, Johnny.
No Wawa here. It's all sheets. All sheets.
Oh
That's
my
like-
God.
Wawa and the Eagles on the eastern side of the state, Sheets and the Steelers on the western side of the state.
Mm.
I'm right like in the middle, so I'm right on the line there.
Well,
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
take my
it's
local
Sheets.
reference. Half credit.
That's good though.
All right. We appreciate you being here, Lucha Johnny. Again, Lucha Johnny's from the Geek the F Out podcast, available everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We'll get more into that towards the end of the pod, but we take pleasure, lots of pleasure, in you gracing us with your presence, Johnny. So thank you for carving out a little bit of time in your schedule to come talk video games with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let me tell you a little secret. Not a lot of people know this, Johnny, but you are going to be privy to a piece of information that, we consider pretty exclusive here. Jeff W. is always DTF.
Yeah.
That stands for Down to Talk Fun, Johnny. And it's time to get into our strategy guide section where we're going to talk all the latest and greatest video game news. Take it away, Vactor.
Oh, yeah. Well, as you heard in the opening of our podcast, there was some Indiana Jones news that just broke. There's going to be a new first-person Indiana Jones video game coming later this year. And guess what, boys? It's going to be free on Game Pass. Exactly what we like to see here on the Sandbox Gamers. Sorry for that. But this is going to be a big release, boys. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. They put out a little behind the scenes package, Bethesda did, and I can play some of the footage while we're talking here, but this looks pretty good to me, boys. It looks like Tomb Raider / Uncharted, but a first person version, which both of those were inspired by Indiana Jones. So this looks right up my alley. Puzzle solving, traversal. This looks like something that I'm going to be interested in, even though I'm not the biggest Indiana Jones fan. I like Harrison Ford, but Indiana Jones was never my favorite Lucasfilm property growing up. I'm interested to hear what all of you boys think.
I think the game looks fantastic. I didn't really know what to expect with the rumors of this game and then all the hype behind it that's been building up for the last few weeks. But after seeing it, I don't know why I didn't expect what I just saw. It looks like a Bethesda game. It looks like, and this isn't bad, it looks like a lot of the other games that they put out. But you know what it also reminds me of a little bit? I know it's a completely different genre, but it also reminds me of like Resident Evil 7 or 8.
Oh, yeah.
Just something about like when he's in the parts in the trailer where he's looking at the rats, or he's putting like the big clock piece on the wall, or he puts his hand in a hole and a big spider comes out. Like I was happy to get chopped off at that moment. But it looks really great. And I'm surprised they forked over the cash for Harrison Ford's likeness. I didn't think he was going to look like Harrison Ford, especially at the beginning of the trailer when it's got the side of Indiana Jones' face and his hand is sort of covering his face right there.
Right.
I was like, okay, who's this going to be? Am I going to be looking at Troy Baker's face? All right, come on. So first impression, it got me. It grabbed me by the shirt and it pulled me really close and it said, "You're going to play me."
Yeah. And also, I got to say, kudos to Rob, because normally he makes the joke that he doesn't know who Troy Baker is, but this time he let it fly. He said Troy Baker. It just came right
crap.
out the holster.
All right, we have to start the podcast over. All right, let's get back to one.
Yeah.
You know, and I was just gonna say too. So it's being developed by Machine Games, who I think we all probably know mostly for their Wolfenstein continuations here.
Mhm.
You know, I guess they're responsible for all the newer ones. And I mean, I know me and Vactor, we played through co-op on one of those. I know we like that. I
Yes.
like the other ones around that
Mhm.
as well. All great games. And this kind of looks like sort of an extension of that. Like this does not look too far off from what we played
Right.
in those games. And so yeah, I think it looks great. And I think, you know, just more, you know, me and Vactor, we went and seen the latest Indiana Jones in the theater, and
Mhm.
this is where I think video games can step in, right? Like that movie to me wasn't great. I mean, it was okay, I suppose. I didn't hate it, but this is where, you know, and like Rob said, the likeness, Harrison Ford's likeness should live on. You know, you can put these in video games now, you know. So I think it's just nice to see uh I think you know, a different version of that, but still it just feels good. Whereas, you know, in the indie movie, when they show young Indy, it feels weird to me. You know, with his face being, you
Mhm.
know, CGI or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think this has high. I am on the hype train for this.
Oh,
And
damn.
I love the Wolfenstein games, and that's really what has, you know, triggers that. Like you said, I'm not really a like you, Vactor. I'm not a huge indie fan either. Like they're fine movies or whatever. I don't think, you know, I would enjoy them as much as like Star Wars or and stuff. But yeah, I mean, this looks good. This looks like those games, but you know, with this skin on it, and they have experience with Nazis, so they
What?
should have plenty.
Yeah.
You know, I'm saying if Indy's battling the Nazis, you know, Wolfenstein. That's the whole game. Just
Yeah.
Oh,
saying.
all right.
It should
How
be
many
good. I'm not. Yeah, that
tickets?
wasn't a random call out, Rob. Was it?
Well, you mention them
Invoking.
every episode, so I was just like, it's like an Easter egg
Wow.
counter. How many tickets to the hype train do you have,
Jeez.
Johnny?
Maybe one now because I didn't know this game existed until just this
Oh,
moment.
snap. Yeah.
From what I saw, I really liked that shot. The one that caught my attention in the trailer that was playing on the page was the snowy rope bridge. That looked
Mm.
cool.
Oh,
You said this is Bethesda doing it, and it's
yes.
going to be on Game Pass. That's tempting. I mean, get a month of Game Pass and play through it.
Yes.
I play on PC, and I've done the Game Pass on PC too. It's been pretty
Yeah.
useful. I've done Sony's on PC too to play through the Final Fantasy remake.
Ah.
That was
Mhm.
interesting. But yeah, it's worth a month of Game Pass at least, I'd say.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's not like a 7-hour game. I don't know, something about of course I don't know anything. I'm not an insider, but something that just sort of screams short game to me. You know, it's a
Mhm.
scripted game. It's a mostly linear, at least I can assume, because it's an Indiana Jones game, and it's not like the rest of Bethesda's library. But as long as the story is great and the action is, you know, in your face, I think despite it being a shorter game, it should be good. But I know that's what Vactor loves. Like Vactor eats those short
Yes.
games with a spoon.
Yes. That's exactly.
Yeah. And that's what the Wolfenstein games were very much. Were like a focused, you know, maybe 8 to 10 hour, maybe depending on, you know, how crazy you went with like collectibles and stuff like that. Pretty, you know, linear story. And I mean, you know, when he picks up the hammer or whatever, the chisel thing in there, that is what, you know, looks like the Wolfenstein games to me. So yeah, this should not be, if it's in the same vein, it's going to be pretty straightforward and yeah, totally worth a month of Game Pass, you know, just to run. And I would honestly recommend anybody here who has not played those Wolfenstein games to play those games. Those are extremely fun, in my opinion, especially if you like first person shooters. I mean, those are, quick, Vactor would love those games. They're quick, and they'll probably give you a feel for what this game is going to be. And I really like those.
All right. And Troy
Yeah.
Baker, the king of the maybe the only video game voice actor that exists, of course, is playing Jones. I don't know
Him and the one
why
other
I'm
guy.
surprised.
Yeah, him and the
Yeah,
one other guy.
Nolan North.
Vactor knows. Yeah. That
I
guy.
met both Troy Baker and Nolan North, and they were both nice.
Yes, you say that every time. We mention him.
Well, what did you think about his Indiana Jones voice? This is Joel from The Last of Us. What did you think about his Indiana Jones, or his Harrison Ford impression?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I went into it knowing he was. So let's hear what this yokel came up with for Indiana Jones. But I thought it was pretty good. It was a little wobbly at times, but only because you're so used to hearing Harrison Ford, especially as Indiana Jones. So, but that being said, it's as good as, like, remember the Back to the Future Telltale game, like the guy doing Marty. Like it's as good as that.
Right.
I'll put it on that.
That's fair.
Yeah. Also, Tony Todd, Candyman, Venom from Spider-Man 2 is going to be in it. They showed him in that little clip that we were playing a little bit. They had like a 2-second thing of he's going to be one of the villains, but it looked like it was his exact face. And so I'm sure he's just going to do his regular voice. But another prolific voice actor.
You know what? Let me ask you guys a question. Johnny, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. So this is something I'm noticing in a lot of newer video games where you'll have your voice actors, playing the role as usual, but you're also seeing the actor's likeness. A lot of times you're seeing these actors being taken into the world of 3D versus just making a character and sticking a voice behind them. Like, for example, the guy who plays Trevor in Grand Theft Auto 5 now can't walk anywhere without being recognized as Trevor, as much as he may or may not like that. What do you think of that, Johnny? Like, do you think video games should go more this route where they're just making the actors the characters in the game?
No, I think we should have the game design and the character design first, and then cast the voice to match the character design. Like it seems like the casting the voice actor and then making the character look like the voice actor are kind of stunt castings. I don't know anybody who's gonna buy a video game, and I don't know if the companies don't realize this. Nobody's gonna buy a video game because XYZ is the voice of the character and the character looks like them. I don't. That's why people go see movies, because Dwayne the Rock Johnson is in this movie, so you're gonna go see it because you're a fan of The Rock. You're probably not gonna buy Doom the movie, the video game, just because the avatar of the character looks like The Rock and The Rock is doing voices for it.
Let me get those rock arms in first person. That's
so
what I
think because it takes a little bit of and there's opinions left, right, and forward on video games as an art form, but it takes part of the art form of video games with character design away from it. Like, imagine if the new Final Fantasy game just used all the voice actors as the characters. I don't think it's going to have as deep a lore or world building and immersion as it does otherwise.
That's a great point. All right,
Rob,
well, I'm
that
hyped for it.
That guy
Either
that
way.
plays Marty McFly in that Back to the Future Telltale game, I was looking up his career because I haven't heard anything from him since, but he's actually voiced another Harrison Ford character, Han Solo, in the Lego Star Wars Holiday Special.
What?
And he also
Hey,
voiced
Chewie.
Emmett.
Chewie. I gotta go back.
He's actually had a lot of roles since then, and most recently Disney Speedstorm and God of War Ragnarok. But Han Solo might be his biggest one, and a couple Chris Pratt characters, Owen Grady from Jurassic World, and then Emmett Brakowski from the Lego Movie Part 2. He voiced both of those in addition to Marty McFly. So this AJ, Lacascio, get your money, sir.
That's
Friend of the
another
show,
thing
AJ.
about that. If you think like if they make the characters look like the voice actors, how many video game lead characters are going to look like Troy Baker, Mark Meer, and Jennifer Hale? Like half the video game characters are going to look like the same person.
Right. Yes, that is a great point.
All right, let's
Should we
move
let's
on.
switch over to Ubisoft or Ubisoft, whichever you prefer. I got an email from them, and they want to suggest that gamers get comfortable not owning their games. And this is actually an interesting conversation because in the world of like Game Pass and these subscription services, does it matter that much for owning games? How often do we go back and play some of our old games? Because we do a video game podcast and we talk about the newest games that come out. How often are we going back and playing games that we own? How important is that to you? But this is the quote: gamers are used to a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this Ubisoft senior executive who said they need to shift over from owning to getting their subscription push.
I think it's excuse me. I think it's very interesting. I posted this story on the Sandbox Gamers / Wonder Rob TikTok, and the comments blew up with dozens of people commenting on it saying, "I'm never buying a new boycott Ubisoft. They can't make good. This is dumb." But I think a lot of people are taking the quote, the headline, out of context. Basically, for the same reason that you just said, Vactor. And I personally don't see any sort of issue with this. In case any listeners aren't understanding what's being said, implying the games that you play on Game Pass, the games that you play on the Ubisoft subscription service, you're paying a monthly fee, you're playing the game, you're beating it, and you move on, versus buying a hard copy or a digital copy of a game and keeping it forever. Personally, I don't see any sort of issue with this business model because of the same reason Vactor said. Rarely do I go back and play a game after I've beaten it or I've decided I'm done with the game. Especially these days when I'm a dad, I've got limited time, and there's just so many great games coming out. I don't need to go back and play a Breath of the Wild again. You know what I mean? 120-hour game. I'm a very big pusher for these subscription services, especially with Ubisoft, which in my experience, I'm not a big fan of Assassin's Creed, but I want to give it a shot. But if I'd paid $70 for that Assassin's Creed game and I wasn't that happy with it, I would be pretty upset that I spent $70 versus the $14.99 or whatever the subscription service just to dip my toes in. So I think this is the way of the future. I wouldn't be surprised if other video game companies outside of Ubisoft, Sony, and Microsoft went this way, but I don't see any sort of problem with this.
Yeah, and so I guess I'll give my opinion, which is not exactly the opposite of Rob's, but just a different. Because I agree with Rob, I do, and me and him both did the Ubisoft subscription for that latest Assassin's Creed. I even finished the game, running through it, and that definitely has its place. My only problem with it is more of who it's coming from, and it always. So if this is not my game, when I download it, when I pirate it, is that not stealing it, right? Like they wouldn't see it the other way. And my other problem with it is it's similar, to the argument of some of the movies on the streaming services, right? Like so HBO, I would say one of the best HBO shows in the last I don't know, decade or so, was the Watchmen series that came out. It's one of my favorites. And I think Vactor, I remember you liked it. I'm sure, it seemed like that was, kind of universally praised at the time. I feel, but I really like that, and I can't watch it, or unless they've changed something in the last week, it's off HBO Max, right? And I
Mhm.
don't know if can you get physical media that probably, but if you didn't, what would you do, right? I remember it's just I get it, but at the same time, at the same time, I need to be able to get this content too. And I feel like the next step, right? So if people let them if they let them get away with saying this stuff without critiquing it, I feel like the next step is like basically, you know, okay, so we're never going to give you a physical copy of a game, or we're never going to give you like a download, which I don't think will happen. I think obviously we'll always have like a way to get a download of a game independent of even a Steam or, you know, platform for it to be on. You should be able to get a full copy of the game, right? And uh I just I don't know, it just feels weird to me, and I've been doing a lot of stuff with the emulation on my little handheld RG35X or whatever it was. And Rob, you
The
got the
ally.
analog. Yeah.
Mhm.
And to me, like what keeps those alive is people, you know, preserving those games. Cause let's be honest, if you want to play a lot of games, if you want to go back, like, you guys have the boys, right? If you want to go back and play some of those games in pretty much the easiest way, right? Like in a way that's not too expensive for most families, it's probably going to be, through an emulator and like obtaining, copies of the games online. So to me, I just feel like I understand what they're saying and I agree and I do pay the subscription services. I want that. But I don't think that should be the only way to get these games. I mean, I sent you guys a link to it, the gamehistory.org. They preserve everything for video games. They do even like bootleg, unreleased, all kinds of stuff. They have libraries of information there. And I think it's important, like video games are something I obviously care about. And I just want, everything saved, whether it was meant to be released or not, or if it's out there, you should be able to play a game. And I mean, I think of things like some of my favorites of all time, right? Like, like Metal Gear Solid 4. If you want to play that game, I mean, go play it. You're gonna have to find a PlayStation 3. You're gonna have to find a legit copy of the game. Like, it's not gonna be the easiest thing. You can't just stream that right now, right?
That might
So
be
maybe if
changing
they have
soon.
everything, right, right. But maybe when they have everything on there, I would agree with this. But until then, I mean, I feel like there should be a way that somebody out there can get these games independent of, the stream service.
What do you think,
Johnny,
Johnny?
you said you signed up for the Sony one. You said
Yeah, I did the Sony PlayStation Plus, whatever it is, to stream Final Fantasy VII Remake because it hadn't come out on PC yet, or it had just come out, and I'm like, I don't want to pay $70 for this. Oh, it's on
Yeah.
their streaming service on PC. So I tried it with my old DualShock 3 and it didn't work. So I borrowed a buddy's DualSense from his PlayStation 4, hooked it up to my computer, and played it with that flawless. Had no issues,
Mm.
no lag, no input issues. It played, felt like it was installed on my computer. And then when I finished it, I just ended the subscription.
Yeah.
That's like you were talking when you first were talking about Indiana Jones. The way you phrased it, I was like, wait, is this only going to be on Game Pass? But then I saw it's like wish list and whatnot. But I would not be surprised. We have console exclusives. I would not be surprised if at some point in the future, when are we going to get our first game that is exclusive to Game Pass or to EA Plus or Ubisoft? All these services are Plus now, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Or Game Pass or Sony's or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
You were talking about replaying. It's the same thing. Like Mass Effect, I'll replay every now and again, 1, 2, and 3. But I'm like, I probably, because of the nature of games, I'm dating myself a little bit here. I started with an Atari 2600. That was my first console. So I
Oh,
probably
wow.
have more multi playthroughs in like Choplifter, River Raid, and Pole Position than I do like games that came out later.
Jeff, the
Contra on the
Atari
NES.
2600, that was an early video console, Jeff. Before the Nintendo.
That was
Before
before Rob's
Nintendo.
time.
No, how dare you?
I think we had the 2600, and then there was the Atari 5200 and the 70 something hundred. And I know I had Atari 2600, and I think we ended up with a 5200 before we got an NES. And then I went on from there. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember my cousin was the only person I knew that had an Atari. So when I went over to her house, that's how I'd play. And I remember that Star Wars game, the one where you're shooting that.
Oh, yeah.
At legs.
You're just you're just the snow speed or side scrolling shoot.
Yes.
You had to
yes,
shoot the little flashing piece of the AT-AT's head.
Yes.
I had that game.
So, yeah.
I had
But
ET
I think-
too, the worst video game of all time.
Yes. Got buried in the landfill. But so Jeff, you're saying for preservation purposes, you you don't like physical media though, right? You're all digital.
Right. And it doesn't have to be like I don't have a bunch of game discs laying around, but I have, hundreds and hundreds of gigs of of video games, on my computer. And
He's
it's
a digital hoarder.
yeah, and so it doesn't need to be like I don't need the game in a cart or a disc or whatever, but I feel like you should be. I just don't want it to be only streaming, only locked into the I should be able to buy the game, period.
Mhm.
There shouldn't be a $15 subscription only for everything, and it's just to have the option. I'm sure though that option will always be there, but I feel like when people start to say this, like they take away ownership from people that are putting in the money, to me it feels a little dirty. And like I said, if it's not my game and I pirate it, then it's not stealing, right? I'm not.
You wouldn't steal a car. Jeff.
Exactly.
Jeff.
So it's
would I?
you think too about though, like Steam is probably safe, right? If you buy a digital game from Steam, you're probably
Right. Yeah.
not going to lose access to it before you die. But this is something that a lot of people were complaining about with Nintendo shutting down the marketplaces for the DS and the Wii U, is that there's going to be games that were available on those platforms that now there's not going to be any way to access them at all going forward. They're going to live on the consoles they're downloaded on, and that's it. Once those consoles eventually succumb to the passage of time, no more do those games exist.
Right. Very interesting.
Yep.
Rob, there's something else that's interesting. I know that Rob was a huge NFT fan when GameStop first announced that they were doing NFTs. Rob, first of all, he cleaned up the poop out of his pants, and then right after that, he ran out of his house and he shouted from the rooftops that GameStop was doing an NFT marketplace. Well, sad news, boys.
Ninja fucking Turtles. I love them. Yeah, I got a bunch of these NFTs.
Well, GameStop is giving up on not the Ninja Turtles, but the digital NFT marketplace that was in operation for about 18 months. It's going to be stopping February 2nd, 2024. This is due to an ongoing regulatory uncertainty in the crypto space. GameStop's decision to end support for its cryptocurrency wallet. The only thing that enticed me about NFTs, none of the digital art and digital collecting, but it was being able to, and I've told these guys this before, Johnny, but this is something I've never told you before. I liked the idea of being able to sell a digital game the way that you sell a physical game. So after you're done with it, as I just talked about in the last segment, I don't really go back and play my games. So instead of just sitting there in my library collecting digital dust, instead of doing that, I would be able to sell it back. And how would you be able to do that? Well, with an NFT, you would have the receipt. You would have it on the blockchain. It would be stamped and said, I sold this to Rob and now it's his. That was the idea that I liked. But it looks like that idea is not going to happen. At least with GameStop, it's not going to, because they are giving up on the NFT market. Sad day, boys. Sad day.
I was never on board with this.
What?
Not
Yeah.
once.
See, I didn't know that.
There's a person we know, Johnny, who shall remain nameless, who bought an NFT of the Starship Enterprise, a digital thing you can spin around, and this was his get rich quick scheme. I'm going to make so much money on this NFT. And we would point out to him, hey, the NFT market's fluctuating. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. I'm going to make so much money on this NFT. Like we all make bad decisions. I bought a Wii U on launch day. Right. It didn't work out. So I'd be
What
really
are you talking
interested
about?
in hearing.
I bought a Wii U on launch day and I thought it was great. I love my
Yeah.
It worked out really great. You're right, Johnny.
I played Breath of the Wild on my Wii U.
So this story is very, very interesting to me, and I didn't, up until I read the headline, I didn't even realize NFTs were still a thing. So there you go, everybody. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong.
So look, like
That's my
in May of 22, I finished my associate's degree in professional office management. I had a business communications course. My final research paper for business communications was titled "Adoption, Admonishment, and Abandonment: NFT and the Blockchains in Video Games." So I have a 7-page paper about this kind of thing that I wrote.
I have a 0-page paper, Johnny.
Tell us, Johnny. Tell us your thoughts. What was in that paper?
Well, do you remember it was right around the time? Do you remember the Worms revival? Team 17
Yes.
Meta
Yes.
Worms was the project, and everybody was getting hyped. Oh, Worms is coming back. Worms is coming back. And then they typed the 3 letters that they never should type if you're a video game maker, which is N, F, and T in succession. And the project went from the 100% down to 0 because everybody was like, the backlash that they received was astounding. 24 hours later, they went back and said it was abandoning the project entirely. Like, not just stopping the NFT part, but just not going to do it because of the backlash that they received. It's going to take somebody big that doesn't really care what the public thinks, like Epic or Ubisoft, to be like, hey, this game's going to have NFTs and we don't care what you think. But
right.
But yeah, the public reaction to NFTs in general has been really, really negative since basically the beginning. I remember when they first started to enter my consciousness was Corridor Crew had I think it was Beeple had like an auction, the first big NFT auction where they sold like NFTs for stupid amounts of money. But since that, all the reaction that I've seen to them has just generally been negative across the board.
Yeah. I think NFT is a bad brand, let's say, right? You don't want to associate with it, I think, at all. I don't know. And like you said, I think outside of that Beeple artwork sale, I can't think of much positive news about NFTs, really. Anything, even like the potentials are only kind of like middling, right? Like that's not really like a good story. That's more of like, hey, like this is what could kind of happen with these. And yeah, I think I'm kind of waiting for like the public to move on from this concept. I mean, it seems like we are, obviously, but yeah, I don't know. I like Vactor's case. He's made this case to me many times, and I understand it, and I get what he's saying. I just don't think this is going to be the thing to make that happen. NFTs it's a bad brand. It's not good. It's like New Coke. You don't want it.
In 6 to 12 months, somebody will come up with a new term for it. It'll be the same thing with a different name.
Yep. Yeah.
and they'll market it better from the beginning, and then it'll get more adoption. But right now, if
Mhm.
you don't use if you're a video game manufacturer or developer, whatnot, do not use the letters NFT anywhere around the name of your upcoming game. It's just a bad idea.
Oh man. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for the news this week. Thank you, Vactor, for guiding us through the swamp of NFTs. Now it's time to move on to our Let's Play section where we talk about the games we've been playing this past week. And I'm going to start with our esteemed guest, Johnny. Says you've been playing Control. Tell us all about it.
I finished Control. I finished Control and moved on to. I finally bought WWE 2K23. So I started doing universe mode and GM stuff in that. But I
Nice.
was actually talking to Vactor before this about Control, and I didn't know anything about Control before I started playing it because I'd seen Spawnwave mention it, and the advice seemed to be, if you don't know anything, go into the game blind. And I think that gave me, like, my preconceptions made me overthink it, and I ended up hyping it up for myself too much, because I feel like I said earlier, the gameplay got in the way of the story, in my opinion, because it's a pretty bog standard third person shooter with special abilities. It doesn't really, and maybe it was different in 2019 when it released. I'm playing it in 2024, so 5 years ish later. So I take that into account too.
Right.
But it didn't really do anything terribly interesting gameplay wise as far as I was concerned. And by the time you got like the interesting powers, like the levitate power and whatnot, you were way further into the game where it should have hooked you already. Like if they'd have given you levitate out of the gate or as like one of your first things, I think that would have been cool. But I love the story. Like the story's right up my alley. It reminds me of the game that I run on the Dice Thespians Twitch channel, an urban fantasy game, tabletop role playing game that I run. It's a combination of like Monty Cook's World of Darkness, and there's a sci-fi miniseries called The Lost Room that deals all with like altered objects that have powers and do weird stuff. Like the comb in The Lost Room, the comb, if you comb your hair while you're talking to someone, it makes them think that they like you if they don't, even if they don't know you. It's weird stuff like that. And everything with the last house and the way that the Federal Bureau of Control is set up, like all of that really appealed to me in the storyline. But I just wanted to get through, like, the gameplay felt like it was an obstacle. And there was parts where I told Vactor this, like, oh, hey, I got to go to this containment cell to go see my brother. And I go through all these levels and whatnot. And I understand they have to do this from a game design perspective. And I get there, and then I get a message from another character. Oh, he's here where you just left. Now he's here waiting for you. So now you have to go back to where you came from. And everything that happened in between was inconsequential story-wise. It was just there to pad out the gameplay, which probably would have been okay if the gameplay was more fun. And that could entirely be up to me because I know the game is really popular. I know it's connected to Alan Wake, but I haven't played Alan Wake, so that didn't strike me as anything interesting. Now, when I go to play Alan Wake, because I have Alan Wake on Steam and I've been eyeing Alan Wake 2 for when I finish that, I'll probably see those connections and be like, oh, that's cool. But I just think it would have worked better as a narrative in a different medium than it did in the game, whether that's TV, movie, comic book, novel, something different.
I've got this game in my back catalog. I played it for a short amount of time around when it came out in 2019 over NVIDIA GeForce Now's streaming service.
All right.
And from what I played, I was enjoying it. I didn't get terribly far. I think I maybe only had like 2 hours into the game. But this game fell victim to what a lot of games fall victim for me, is that this game's great. Oh crap, there's another great game out. Put this over here. I will go back and play this. So it's still on my backlog. I still have it in my Steam catalog, and I do want to go back to it eventually. Basically, for the things you were saying about the story and the connections between Alan Wake and Quantum Break too. I think it's also connected to that, maybe. But
there was also like when the game starts and Jesse's talking and saying you, like it feels like she's talking to the player, and I thought they were going to do this really neat like meta thing with that, and then it turned out that they didn't. Like so it's something else entirely.
Yeah.
And that's like I said, that's probably me. My own preconceptions maybe bounce off of it, but it was mostly the gameplay. I turned on the immortality and the one-shot kills just to get through the gameplay sections,
nice.
so that
no shame in that.
I appreciated that they had those options right in the menu, and I didn't have to enable the console or anything to do cheat codes. But yeah, I liked the story. I just didn't find the gameplay particularly enjoyable.
It's interesting to hear. I'm sure a lot of people have had your same experience where they hadn't played Alan Wake and they just played Control. Jeff and I both finished Alan Wake, and then we finished Control when it first came out, and I think we had the benefit of like seeing the evolution, the progression of Alan Wake, and I think I agree with you on a lot of the gameplay points. I was playing it, but I'm more of a story guy anyway. I usually play the game for the story for the most part, but when the gameplay is just not something you're enjoying, then it starts to feel like a slog. So I can definitely sense that in Control as well. I wasn't a huge fan of the way it controls, but I think the story is what pushed it for me. And then kind of finding out later, it was like a stealth Alan Wake. Like they didn't announce it, or they didn't say, "Hey, this is in the Alan Wake universe." It just kind of came out, and it was almost like that. What was that M. Night Shyamalan movie where Split, where it was like, "Oh, we're watching this new movie," and then at the very end, that's Bruce Willis from The Sixth Sense. It's all connected. That's kind of how it was for Control, where it was like,
man.
what?
Yeah.
He was dead the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say Vactor.
Unbreakable. I'm sorry, not The Sixth Sense.
I was gonna say Unbreakable. Yeah.
That's Bruce Willis from Die Hard. It's
Right.
John McClane.
Oh man, but yeah, I think there's some good points here. I think, and Vactor said, like, I mean, I remember Control being pretty enjoyable at the time when I played it, and I think it was. I think I'm trying to think, because when I think of that game, and because I got probably like an hour and change into Alan Wake 2, which I need to like still do. That's still on my list of games I need to play. It was nice to see the evolution of that. You see kind of where they started, or their first, huge game that I think was kind of next level in Alan Wake. And then you see Control. And then in Alan Wake 2, you see essentially the combination of the two. And so that's why I probably look back on it fondly for that reason. I would need to play it again. I do remember the controls being a little goofy, and I'm huge on that too. Like Vactor, I would almost, if a game controls shitty to me, it is, I don't care what the story is, almost it can ruin the entire game for me. I don't recall having that experience, but it definitely doesn't surprise me. Alan Wake 2 is also in that category. I remember playing it and it being a little weird. I wish it was a little more like open, especially in the beginning of Alan Wake 2. You're kind of like confined to this like on rails experience. And so I could see it being frustrating, but I do have fond memories of Control, but maybe it was for the time.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it has aged as well. Like you said, Johnny, there was a huge amount of hype when that game.
Yeah.
It was like on everybody's game of the year list. It was like, you got to play Control, and we were in the middle of it as it was coming out, and we were like, yeah, this is fun. But I think also, to your point, getting the telekinesis powers earlier, getting the levitation, and like getting the stuff a little bit earlier, because to me that opening level and the opening a couple levels were a little bit slow, and then once I started getting all my powers together, then it was like, oh, okay, I'm having fun now. But also, that was one of those games that I would step away from it, and then when I come back, I forgot how the buttons, how the button layouts are and how the things. I'm like, oh, I gotta get readjusted to it. So every couple months, I'd have to go back and reacclimate myself. But I finally did see credits on that one. But I did enjoy Control as at the time, but I don't know about today if I went back and played it.
It was weird with the controls. It was one of those weird ones where I couldn't decide if it was better with the controller or keyboard and mouse. Like I wanted a hybrid. Like some things were better with keyboard and mouse, mainly movement and shooting, and like other stuff was better with the controller. And it was a weird instance of not being able to decide which was the more comfortable way to play it.
Mm. Yee.
Well, there you go. It says you've been playing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Vactor.
Yeah, so we talked about the demo dropping last week. I think it was as we were recording. The demo had just dropped either the day before or the day of. And I'm happy to report, boys, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. That platforming, side scrolling thing that I love so much in the Prince of Persia universe, which I actually really liked Prince of Persia. Rob, when we worked at Hollywood Video, going back to like early 2000s,
Video.
there was a good Prince of Persia game. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like an
Sands of
Xbox
Time?
360. I think that was the one. I was a huge Prince of Persia fan. I'm surprised the series didn't kind of have longer legs, but seems like they're trying to bring it back now. What they were doing with Assassin's Creed, that's what they should did with Prince of Persia maybe. But I really enjoyed this demo for what it was, for exactly what it is. It's called The Lost Crown, and like I said, it's that platforming, side-scrolling thing that I love so much. And the art style is really good. I I'm contemplating signing up for the Ubisoft Connect to play it, but the demo might have given me just enough, just that that 15 minutes, that taste that I need. I wish more games had demos like these so that I can either decide if I want to buy it, spend more time in that universe, or just kind of have my 15 minutes and be done with it. I think right now I'm leaning towards not signing up for Ubisoft Connect, but maybe if there's another game that comes out that I'm really wanting to play, I'll play this Lost Crown. I'll play the full game at the time, but for right now, I think the demo was enough for me.
And it's worth pointing out, I'm not 100% positive, but I'm 99% positive Ubisoft Connect is only available on PC, just for our console players out
I
there.
think that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is demos on PlayStation and Switch. I don't know about Xbox, but there is demos on PlayStation and Switch.
I'm not going to dive too deep into it because I know we got a heart out for Johnny, but I've been playing Portal Reloaded this week, which is a fan-made mod, continuation of Portal, which takes place between 1 and Portal 2. I'm only a couple hours into it. Reportedly, it's about a 7-8 hour game, so I don't have a lot of the meat off the bone just yet, but I will say I am enjoying it for what it's worth so far. The puzzles are creative. I like the voice acting and the writing so far, but again, I'm just getting into it. But it's funny how you haven't thought with Portals for years, and all of a sudden it just comes back to you like that. So I'll get more into it next week when I've got a little more under my belt. But I just want to give this a recommendation. It's a free mod for Portal 2 available on Steam with the full backing of Valve. So if you've got Portal 2,
Nice.
give it a shot. It's free. Portal 2 is only $10 on Steam, I think, right now. So it's worth the $10 if you don't have it. But if you do have it, try it. It's great.
Yeah. And I was gonna add real quick, Rob, the low key, I don't think if you haven't kept up with Portal, the mods for these games, mods for Portal 2 are actually insanely high quality. I linked another one in our chat on Discord. Vactor can put it in the notes. Portal Stories Mel is one of the best mods I've ever played in a video game ever. Period. It is, and I would recommend that to everybody here. If you're into Portal, this thing is great too. And if you look at the rest of the community mods, if you can look them up on Steam, there's several. I have several Portal mods in my library that I've been meaning to get to. This one I completed. So yeah, these Portal mods are actually, if you're just out of that community, these are super high quality games. I'm shocked that, like, they don't get more attention, but yeah, I'm gonna have to try the one that you're recommending as well.
Yeah, just make a new Portal game, Valve. Come on.
Right.
What's going on? It's been 10 years. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Sandbox Gamers. But don't leave yet, because we got some bookkeeping and things I want to tell you. First of all, thank you very much on behalf of all of us, Johnny, for taking time out of your schedule to come talk video games with us. You're welcome back anytime to chit chat with us about our favorite hobby. But tell us where we can find you and where you're doing all your cool stuff on the internet.
Geek the F Out on YouTube is primarily, we have our weekly show is called Trek Retrek. My co-host Kayla had never seen any Star Trek except for the Abrams movies with Chris Pine, and I have watched all of Star Trek. Basically, I'm a huge Star Trek fan, big Trekkie. So we started at the beginning of the original series, and we have been going through episode by episode, talking about each one from the perspective of me, who's seen everything, and her, who has basically seen nothing. So it's been a really interesting ride. We have, in just about 3 minutes, premiering here on Thursday night, episode 35, The Apple, or 34. It's 34, season 2, episode 5. So we're about almost halfway through the show. So that's been interesting. And then we do live streams for various other things, like coming up this weekend, tomorrow, the 19th, we're doing Masters of the Universe Revelation. Vactor is going to be joining us to talk about that on Monday. And we've talked about Fall of the House of Usher and numerous other geeky properties. And then I also run a tabletop role-playing game on a Twitch channel called Diced Thespians. It's called The Sundered Veil. It's a modern urban fantasy game. We're just finishing up recording season 2, and soon we're going to be doing a marathon re-airing of season 1 of The Sundered Veil before the season 2 premiere. So keep an eye out on the Diced Thespians Twitch channel for that to start happening.
I love it.
And
thanks, Johnny.
You can follow me on social media at Lucha Johnny, but there's really not much to see. I'm not good with the social media stuff. Kayla, my co-host, runs all the GTFO social media, which you can find through Geek the F Out on YouTube.
Cool beans, cool beans. Well, we'll have all your links in the show notes for everybody to find. Please check out Lucha Johnny and all his endeavors. Vactor has a YouTube channel called The Vactorverse, where he's talking everything and anything comic book related each week. Tell us about that, Vactor.
Oh, yeah. Over at youtube.com/Vactor. Also, Instagram and TikTok. But my main goal is to push the YouTube channel. So youtube.com/Vactor. I'm talking Star Wars and superheroes. Everything that you could desire is over there. This week, we're going to be talking about Echo. Next week, we're going to be talking about, what was the other? I'm blanking on the other one. We have another show lined up coming up soon. But all those things, superheroes and Star Wars.
Excellent. All right. I'm out there streaming video games every Friday and Saturday on TikTok Live. Come join me with that. And you can find all of our show links in our link tree /Sandbox Gamers Podcast, Instagram, Twitter, all the usual suspects, YouTube, and again on TikTok, streaming games every Friday and Saturday night at 1 Rob. We'll be back at you next week with more video game news. But until then, GG, everybody. GG.